Welcome, everyone. It is the Your Little Castle show. At times, I hear from a lot of fans, Ed, and they're like, Cowboy, what are you going to do? Help these Cardinals. Why won't they do this or why won't they do that? I don't want to get too specific. I mean, people say all kinds of wonderful things to me because they want us to have a winning World Series team every year. That's just not quite how it works.
It's not happened. It just doesn't happen. You can get you look at the runs they've made in the 20s and the 40s, the 60s, 80s, and early 2000s, and it's just you look at the Yankees. Last year they were in the World Series, first time since 2009. Cardinals have been in there twice. And look at all the money the Yankees have spent. So I mean, there is a cycle where you play really well, then you got to age out and bring in new talent and things like that. So they'll be back. They will definitely be back. They've got some good lights into the forecast of the future.
And we can mention it. There was a little fun event we had that you invited me down to, and got to talk to some of the upper echelon there just for a little private chat.
Yeah, we had a nice dinner where Chaim Bloom was in town, and we did it for our Sabre organization. And you've seen a lot of insights, what happened in Tampa Bay, in Boston. It's going to be happening here. We talked a little bit about the history of the Cardinals, and a lot of it started with Branch Rickey.
Yes.
Player development, build the minors. Branch Rickey created the first major leagues minor league system aligned to the teams. Prior to that, they were like independent minor league things. He was signing them to contracts, aligning it to his team so then they would come up through the Cardinals. Did it work? Well, just 26, 28, 30, 31, 34, 42, 43, 44, and 46 were directly responded because of Branch Rickey's minor league system. And you go develop the players now, especially in this economic time, it makes sense. And they've got some good players down in the minors. You're going to see a difference here real quick, probably even this year.
Well, that's what we talked about because the Cardinals are historic for not breaking the bank, but still, it doesn't matter who spends the most money.
It's not.
They don't hand the trophy, hey, guys, you spent the most money. Here's the World Series trophy for you. That's not how it works.
No, it doesn't. I mean, like I said, look at all the money the Yankees have spent year after year after year, in chasing. 2009, the last time, big bucks in Boston. Where are they at? Atlanta has won a few recently, but think about all those years they won. Was it 10, 14 division titles in a row?
Bobby Cox, yeah.
And they couldn't get past the hump in just the one World Series. So, it is cyclical, but it's really the commitment. The Cardinals' way is going to be to build this player development system that has kind of fell up behind a little bit. That's why Chaim Bloom is down in the minors last year and this year, rebuilding it. Might say he's building the bed he's going to sleep in when he takes over in charge in this fall, and with the talent and the way. I mean, people are all upset about Boston beating them this weekend. They could have won some of the games. Who would have thought Hensley would have blown a save after what he did last year? But it happens. It really does happen. But Boston was built by a Chaim Bloom as well, and Boston is picked by many to win that tight Eastern race.
Yeah, I mean, as a matter of, there are many methods to become the best. One of them is to just throw money at it.
Well, you did. I mean, you look what was thrown at Max Scherzer and Verlander. They were each getting $40-something million plus with the Mets. Did the Mets go to the World Series and win? No. Did they both get hurt? And then were they then traded away in the year? I mean, your Scherzer, he's already hurt 1 week into it. Is that good economics? Would you do that?
Right. I wish we would sign Scherzer just because he's a St. Louis guy, but at this point he's well past his prime.
Right.
I would say not well past, but towards the end of his career where he was.
Well, he was one of the best
pitchers in baseball.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just was unfortunate. They could never work out something to come to St. Louis. His aspirations were bigger than the market. I mean, and that's the other thing. You also have to look at, just don't blame ownership. Don't blame what's going on in the field. Cardinals, I mean, they got a good team this year. The hitting has been an issue that's been missed the last several years.
Yep.
It is there. They're setting records with their hitting for these first games of the season.
Yeah, it was the Cardinals' record, 10 straight hits. 10 hits per game or more in like 8 games straight or something?
Yes. So, it's there. I think it's a different year as well. It's like the last several years, we've had so many outfielders, and then so many, especially second basemen on the infield, who's where and what, and it's now this philosophy. This is your position, the starting outfielders and the starting infielders. You can go 0 for April and probably into 0 for May, and this is still your position. So there's no worry. This is a very, very relaxed club. They're just a total team in the locker room, and you're going to see that just come out. Their bump in the road has not been hitting and driving in runs. The bump in the road has been the pitching, and I think you're going to see some adjustments in the pitching.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how baseball rolls. I'll caveat flashback. I went to the Battlehawks home opener the other night, and brand new season here, or the St. Louis Battlehawks, because we do have football in St. Louis.
Yes.
The Battlehawks. And a buddy of mine came up to me, and I felt kind of bad because he's like, Cowboy. And I'm like, hey, and then where have we met? And he goes, Crestwood. I'm like, there's only a few people I would say Crestwood, unless that was, you're talking about the Crestwood Lindbergh, Charlie Gately, if you knew Charlie Gately, the old coach there, Lindbergh. We played summer ball, and Slaba, I was the Slaba most valuable player. Dan Geeney is his name. I'm like, Dan, oh my gosh, Dan had 13 wins in Division I baseball, beating some of the SEC teams. He was playing in Memphis, and he never got drafted. And that's where I told him, I said, Dan, I hadn't talked to you about it. It's 30 years or whatever it is now. What was it like? And back to that discussion, pitching wins games. I mean, my dad would say, the joke is, good hitting stops, good pitching stops good hitting.
Yes.
And vice versa.
Right? Yeah,
But you got to have that pitching. I mean, I remember when you get a closer an ace, who just shuts people down. Your hitting doesn't have to be that great, but you shut people, Clemens and those kinds of guys.
Yeah.
Randy Johnson.
And you can pitch around. It's not who throws the hardest or whatever. It's who, look at John Tudor. Remember John Tudor, the Cardinals?
Crafty lefty.
Crafty lefty. He didn't have overpowering speed, but he moved the ball.
Yes.
And that is, the essence of baseball. And the Cardinals, they got some studs down there in the pitching. Look out for the next several years coming in, You just got to give the guys a chance. Let them relax. Know you're playing. Not that, if I strike out once or twice, I'm out of the lineup for how long, That's the right way to play. I think there was the confusion last year. And like I said, I'm excited. I think they'll contend for the division, I mean, and people forget, 3 games last year? If they would have won 3 more games, they would have been in the playoffs. Yeah. They weren't that far out.
That was my contention with a lot. I get all of these groups that I'm in, and I get to post pretty much whatever I want in these groups. The guys will see me do this for a song. Cowboy, whatever you got. If it's a community thing, put it in there. But if it's baseball discussion, put it in there. And I said, I just took an image from the 2006 and I think 2011, which I think 11 was when we had even a lesser record, if you will, but won the World Series.
Right.
And we finished 1/2 game better or less last year than when we won it. And that was because they didn't play that one game because it didn't matter. But literally, this team was not way out of contention. No. And do you want to be, I'm going to put the hat on for this because if we get into our Cardinal Cowboy discussion right there. But do you want to be the number 1 team in the league? They don't pay you for having the best record.
Yeah.
They pay you for winning the World Series.
Right.
Who gets hot during that time, and that's just a formulation.
Well, and if you remember those 2 teams you speak of, they came as a wild card, win the World Series because you get momentum.
That's what
the team is gelling. This team of all these young players is going to gel. A week ago, they were saying Mason Wynn hadn't got any hits. What's going to happen to him? He didn't start well last year, and then he took off. And if you look at his last 3-4 games, he's hitting the ball, and he's already jumped up to almost 250 from practically hitting 0.
Yeah, he was 0 for his first 11 or something to start.
So he's coming along. Look at Scott. Victor Scott. Oh my God, he's a relay highlight reel every night. What he's doing, but he's doing it with the bat and the glove. And I think one of the most promising things I saw last Wednesday in the day game is think about when was the last time in Cardinal baseball, or even any Major League Baseball, you saw two men come up, bunt singles. And, they just like, whoa, the Angels didn't know what was going on. And, it led to a big win. So it's starting to get a little bit exciting with these young kids, the speedsters, the great defense, starting to evolve. I'm not saying it's great, but you got Donovan, who's got a Gold Glove. Wynn is getting up there in contention last year for the Gold Glove. You got Arenado, who's got a 10, and you're building Scott. He's learning. He's not there fully yet with his routes, but he's getting better every day. And there are some catches he's already made this season. I mean, you're building defense. That was the key to all the Cardinal strength of the 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah, you've hit on a lot there. I because of that conversation, at that meeting with Mr. Bloom there shortly, I got to chat with him for a moment after, and I said, I don't question the talent and who you've got and squad and the minor leagues. It's that clubhouse and how does it gel? And that's what La Russa, at times, people question his ability to keep the team. Because, I mean, the first big thing he ran into was Ozzie Smith and him had a clash early on. And he got through that and ended up winning a couple World Series with the Cardinals. And so even the best managers in the world are going to have tough. You're dealing with personalities and egos and multi-million-dollar contracts. How do you get these guys to stick together to say, hey, let's just win some baseball here? And they got a little bit less of that maybe now because you don't have those big contracts.
Well, I think there's two or three things to that. First of all, Whitey had a very relaxed clubhouse. Just don't be late, give it all you got. Tony had, especially in the 2004 World Series, it was just too tight. Everybody was too tight. They weren't relaxed. Really? And the more relaxed this is all these young kids. You don't have a lot of older 35 plus veterans on there. You're having a very relaxed, fun going clubhouse. They're behind each other because they know this is their position. They know what they got to do, and they're responding. Look at Herrera and what he did.
Unbelievable.
Look at all these players. Walker's a different person than he was last year. Wynn is coming about just so he said. And if there's somebody you got to take your cowboy hat off to, it's Arenado. All this stuff about we got to trade and we need to do this, we need to do that. He's there just playing steady, good defense. He's hitting the ball. Contreras is probably the one who hasn't hit to date, but Contreras is making contact. They're not dropping in, and when they start dropping in, look out. He'll come through. So I mean, everybody's contributing, and the pitching, they just got to get a better feel, whether it's a grip on the ball or what. But you got to look. I mean, Michaelis, oh boy, he had call it like it is. He had the worst pitching stats of a starter last year, and he didn't have a great spring. And the other night, it didn't start out very well for the first two innings, but. There are some talent ready to go in the. You got McKeevy, you got Quinn Matthews. Quinn Matthews was the best pitcher in minor league baseball last year. Still learning and developing some things up there at AAA, which you need to do. It's not like in college. He played the 4 years at Stanford in the World Series. Blow it by him. You got to have some more finesse. You got to learn that little differences, and there are a lot of good players.
Well, that's where you start digging into that lineup, and I've put up on the screen here, everybody. You can see. On the wide angle there, check that out. But the Cardinals roster as of 2025, and we were having our little preseason interview we did with my buddy Sam Sumati, STL guru Sam Sumati, and he literally liked McGreevy. And it was a question, why didn't he make the roster? Now, is that a matter of hey, let's let him develop a little bit more, and also as soon as you bring a guy up, then they start the clock for that rookie contract.
Well, and he played last year. He had some great games. I was there when the one-day game last year, he was something else. I was sitting right behind the plate, almost over the catcher's shoulder, and he had some movement on that ball. And and I'm not trying to make this a rah Cardinals discussion. I'm just trying to lay out facts. The facts are the players are looser. They're relaxed. They got a good clubhouse. They're hitting the ball. You can't deny any of those. They've got good defense going. Their weakness right now is pitching. Who would have thought Helsley would have blown a save the other day? That would have been a win. And the other thing, too, is as you look at the standings, they got 3 losses that were in extra innings. So they're there at the middle. They're not blowouts.
Right?
You know,
2 out of those.
Yes.
Both of the losses against the Angels were in overtime. I like to say.
Yeah.
And 5-4, 9-7. There they are. If you can see our screen up there. But yeah, here's this Cardinals record. Lost again last night to the Red Sox, or to the Pirates,
Pittsburgh.
But 2 in a row, and then 3 because there was a postponed game in between. So that's 4 straight losses.
Yeah.
But they had
the only blowout was the one that Michaelis started against Boston, and so I mean they're there. And the thing is, you don't win the pennant in the first 2 weeks of the season. It's
exactly.
Baseball is a long season. Maturity is going to happen. You got young guys. They're healthy. They can last. You know, it's a horse in the race, you know. The healthy one, the young one, the big stud's going to come through and win it at the end, coming around the last turn.
Couple discussions that we had. We had a good pregame prep here. We're always changing and working with our technology here in the building. But Ed and I talked about a few things. But one is this roster, how it evolves, how it changes. The salary cap. How many people say that there should be? And as I understand it, there is no salary cap in MLB.
No, there's really not.
There's no limitation.
There is a tax, theoretical tax.
Right.
You know, and the guys who are paying all the money, they don't really care about the tax. You know, when they're paying, you know, it was 6-8% of Major League Baseball's players account for 80% of the salaries. So it's like all the others. Something's going to have to be done in baseball. A lot of this issue that is severely impacted the Cardinals is out of this television scenario. Those that were with Bally Sports and, you know, changing the names and whatever you want to call them, it's all Diamond Vision was up at top. Where those, 17 teams that were aligned to them when they went bankrupt. You know, Cardinals were lucky last year because they stayed committed to the contract and televised Cardinal ball game partly because of the greatness of St. Louis and the audience watching it. Whereas some cities, I think it was San Diego, maybe it was Arizona, I don't know about Tampa, but they just dropped them totally. And Major League Baseball had to come in and put them on MLB and cover that. That is the biggest concern because you had teams like the Yankees with their Yes Network. You got all these big ones. They are not impacted by this drop in revenues coming from TV revenue. They have their contracts out there, so they're still getting it. So it's kind of like the rich are still getting rich, while the ones who were in the Diamond Vision Bally's issue, they're having to figure out what is my path forward, you know. And it's also, Tatis Jr. Was it Tatis for the 14-year contract? You're signing these guys to 14 years. What is that evolving to? How do you commit to that? How do you know?
Yeah, he's going to be 72 when he retires.
Something like that. But I mean, it is also a thing where, you know, even when you're paying these guys, like, you know, we spoke earlier, Scherzer signed, you know, how he and Verlander were these $40 million contracts. Then they get hurt and they're not playing. And what do you have? You know, it's tough when you figure a starting pitcher and you're paying him $40 million a year. He's going to make just a little over 20 starts. That's $2 million a start. And then they last about 5 innings now.
Divided by 90 pitches if you're lucky.
Yeah, and so it's amazing what these things have and they're going for. So it is, would you make these kind of business decisions if it was your own money? So you got to, but I think the TV revenue is the biggest thing because it hurts all markets that are small. And the ones who weren't a part of that contract, they're just reaping the riches. So there's got to be something, and it's going to come out in 2026 in the CBA. Is there going to be a cap or some kind of threshold minimum is brought up to have a cap? It'll be, who knows what's going to happen.
Well, we have great discussion down at spring training. Cardinal Cowboy was down there. Ron Darling called me out at the Mets-Cardinals game, St. Lucie. And I walk in with the trophy. They go, oh my! It was actually Hernandez, former Cardinal, and he says, "Hey, how do you get the Cardinal? How do you get the World Series trophy?" I've got my little replica that we make. This is made out of real platinum wood, spray paint, and so. But we have fun with this. And they talked about how do you become a Cardinal Cowboy, and I said it starts out on a couch. He said, with a therapist, I think he was referring to. And I was like, well, baseball was my therapy, and I did have an accident. And people know, check that out, cardinalcowboy.com. I got that on the website here. Baseball gave me the skills. I get to run into and work with awesome people like yourself, Ed, and talk to you about sports. First, understand where Ed's background comes from a little bit. And we had your site up there a minute ago. I'm going to put it back up. I had my site up there while we were talking. TheSTLBrowns.com. You have this rich history. You know so much about the background, the history of the Cardinals, the Browns, and Major League Baseball in general, going back to the 20s. I don't know if you were around in the 20s. I don't think you were.
So. But actually, baseball goes back to 1876. That's when the major leagues were formed, and we'll be having the 150th anniversary of
MLB,
of Major League Baseball, and working with the History Museum down in Forest Park. We're going to have a big display.
Nice. Okay.
Coming up on that, about the history of it in St. Louis.
And you've got a eighth book coming out. 7 books already, an 8th, and you're an Emmy Award winner for some films that you put together, sports related. Talk about that real quick, so people understand your background.
Well, I mean, we've written a lot of books, starting with the Browns, because I wanted to keep that legacy alive. People called them, and we made the title of our first film, The St. Louis Browns, A Team Baseball Forgot, and the idea was to energize that memory. And we still have, and you've participated in a few of our luncheons. Where over 400 people gather every year for our annual reunion luncheon at the Missouri Athletic Club. We get thousands that come every summer to the Grizzlies.
That was a packed house, man. That was the Grand Ballroom. I've been there for a few events. One of my buddies, well off, had a wedding there.
Right.
You packed the house. So.
And then we have thousands over at Browns Night at the Gateway Grizzlies, where we dress them up into, I'll pick a player like George Sisler, one of the greatest men. But nobody ever knows George Sisler because he was a Brown. The man, 3 straight years, he averaged 400. One of the greatest men to ever play.
I knew that name, but I didn't
Ty Cobb called him at that. Remember that very first? You see the picture of the first Hall of Fame induction, where they're all sitting there and standing at the bench. They're all there. Sisler's right there in the middle, and they had a dinner that night. And Ty Cobb went to George Sisler during the dinner and called out to the room, "This is the perfect ball player," because of how great he was as a defensive first baseman and a hitter. He got a little bit overshadowed by Lou Gehrig because of New York. And then Babe Ruth, he was hitting home runs while Sisler was hitting over 400. So we dress him up in 1922 uniforms. The year George Sisler was baseball's first MVP, and we give away a bobblehead of George Sisler. Classic, right. And we've done, we said the Browns had the first MVP in baseball. They also had the first Rookie of the Year in the American League in Roy Sievers. So one year we did Roy Sievers and dressed him up in 1949 uniforms. We did Satchel Paige, his 1951 uniform. This year we're doing Pete Gray, the one-armed outfielder.
Was that the Zoom call I was on with you guys? Got to listen in and just any ideas to share?
It's Pete Gray is going to be the great bobblehead. It's really a good-looking one, because all of ours are, and people like, how do you do this? Well, I reject them 2 or 3, 4 times until I get it exactly like I want it. So it looks good. This is the 80th anniversary of Pete Gray, the one-arm player, taking the field.
And he wasn't a pitcher. He was a left fielder.
He was a left fielder. And you know what? People say, well, it was a joke. No, it really wasn't. He was the MVP in 1944 for the Sally Leagues, the Southern Association.
Wow.
Leading the league and stolen bases and hitting. And the thing of it is, I did a big thing. The Cardinals always invite me down to the winter warm-up. And I talked about this 80th anniversary and Pete Gray and what he meant to baseball. Because Pete Gray, was an inspiration to little kids and men coming back. You got to remember, when Pete Gray played in 44 and 45, men were coming back from World War II maimed, handicapped. They may have lost an arm, a leg, some type of affliction. But he became this role model on look, if this man can make it to the major leagues, you can do something with your life. And in one of my films, I have a gentleman who was from Columbia, Illinois. His dad would bring him. He had leg handicap issues as a youth, and he would bring him to the Browns games and said, "Watch this guy. I'm telling you, look, I don't want to hear any pity about your leg. This guy's playing Major League Baseball with one arm. You can do it." And so For all these soldiers coming back maimed from the war, Pete Gray was an inspiration. If he can do it, you can do something with yourself. There was a little bit of a cheesy Monday night at the movies. Remember when ABC had the Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night at the movies during the 70s? Keith Carradine made a movie. It was a little cheesy and kind of the story of Pete Gray. But, you know, I tell about how he was this inspiration. But the other thing is, too, people criticize when Pete Gray played for the Browns, in the games he played in, they had a higher winning percentage than in the games he didn't play in. So, you know, it wasn't him that caused, you know, them to not win the pennant that year. They'd won it in 44, and everybody thought they would repeat in 45. But it's a special thing, and we're celebrating all year, and we'll be out over at the Gateway Grizzlies. Everybody will be in their Browns uniforms. The whole stadium sells out. It's a great place.
Well, I hope to be there for this one because I know I've heard about it, and there's lots of bobbleheads you talk about. I put up on the wall there as you were talking. Pete Gray overcame a childhood accident to history, and there is a picture of him. I'll put that up for everybody to take a look at again. But look at that, one arm, holding the bat with one arm. Yeah. Well, that's just tough to do. Just the lack of strength, but just the guidance, because when you're swinging a bat, I mean, a lot of those Cardinal Cowboy did win a couple batting titles in the day. And you got to have control of that bat because you're not just swinging as hard as you can. You're trying to put that ball in play where you need it to be sometimes. You got to help go to the right side to move the runner over.
That's right.
All the stuff you got to do. And
I don't know,
arms makes it a lot easier.
It makes it well, Cardinal Cowboy had just one. Try to think about Major League pitching. The difference between Major League pitching and minor league pitching and college pitching is just, you know, so wide.
Yeah.
But when you have to react on the pitch, you know, you're looking for one thing, then all of a sudden it's not, or whatever. You got to react. It may not be quite in the zone. Try reacting on one pitch, especially if you kind of out too soon
you can stop
or
your
react.
arm.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's really became his downfall over time.
Ed Wheatley's a great pitcher, by the way, too.
Yeah.
You still pitching a little bit in the men's leagues?
Sometimes.
And go down to the World Series for
the
senior league, I guess, whatever.
Senior baseball, that's correct. Roy Hobbs Senior Baseball.
And you're in the 30 and up league, is that right?
Yeah, 30 and up. And we play in the major league stadiums. We just came back from a big spring training tournament down there. Kick off down with the Reds and the Twins in their Rays stadiums. And
to be clear, it might be 30 and up or a little bit higher.
Maybe a little bit. They do have different age
But you're pitching
groups.
out there
Sometimes they do.
At your age of
our shortstop.
You're still in your low. You're somewhere between 30 and 60.
Somewhere in there, yeah.
Maybe close. But I'm bringing. Have they clocked you lately? How hard you're throwing? You still bringing low 80s or what?
I always threw a sinker ball, and that's what I try to. Ground ball to short, ground ball to second, third base. Go sit down.
Well, everybody, we're finished up here for our first half hour, and we're going to talk about this. We might have another half hour because we went through that pretty quickly. I looked down, I'm like, holy cow, we're up to 28 minutes, 30 seconds. Cardinals baseball is in good shape, actually, everybody. Stay calm. I did talk to Mo for a split second out at spring training. I said, this team could hit. This is a good lineup. He goes, if they will just hit, we'll be in good shape.
And they're hitting.
They're doing that. Now let's get that pitching in order, and then we might be in there. They could make a run for this and then just get into the playoffs in MLB,
right.
And you got a shot at winning it. Fair to say.
That's what it's all about. You get there.
All right, stay tuned for more, everybody. Giddy up.